Hello everybody, welcome to my first ever YouTube video. Today I'm going to be talking about the Pokemon trading card game, in particular the deck Marnie's Grimmsnarl EX. This deck I'm very familiar with. I played it this last week at Locals. I had gone 3-0. I did get the win, so I wanted to come on and talk about that a little bit. We're going to be going over the basics of play, things to look for when setting up, things to look for your list, how to play certain matchups, strategies to look for, win conditions, concepts to better understand the archetype. It's a rather complicated deck, so we're going to be talking about things like that and just try to generally have a better understanding of how to play the deck. Let's get into it. Alright, I've gone ahead and put up a little slideshow presentation because I want to help visualize some of the concepts or understandings of the deck, and I have a few bullet points if you want to go back through and read it all. But let's not waste any time, let's get right into it. The main thing, how to play Grimmsnarl EX, the basics of play. Number one thing, if you win the die roll, you want to go second, and that is because of the second bullet point, Arven and TM Evolution. Incredibly strong combo. You can have anything you want in the active spot, but if you got Arven and you got an energy, you can attach, get those guys built up. You want to get more Grimm in play, you want to get Frostlass in play. Because the main way we're winning games is we're putting Frostlass in play, we're controlling the board state, and we're putting Grimmsnarl in play, and we're swinging big. Know when to use Secret Box. Very, very important, because knowing Arven for Secret Box can win you and lose you games. If you go for second, you have Arven in your hand only, but you need a way to search Pokemon, and you get a little greedy and you go Arven for Poff and Evo, top deck, next turn, you don't have a supporter card, your hand's dead. But knowing when to Secret Box, you know, giving your hand the best chance to be alive on the following turn, maybe finding lilies, giving up on some resources that may be stronger later in the game, you know, having to pitch, knowing what to get rid of. That is the main thing, knowing when and when not to Secret Box. Because if if your hand is alive and you don't need to use Secret Box turn one for Arven, you know, you don't need to get overly greedy to try and make too many cards in your hand. You can save it for the late game, and maybe being able to go, 3 cards for boss at the end of the game can win you the game outright. Knowing when to use Yveltal. That is the brand new best card for the deck. Yveltal with the clutch attack from Mega Evolutions has free retreat for a darkness, does 20, and can retreat lock your opponent's active. So you can give yourself many turns to try and set up, get your board state under control, and then start swinging out. And knowing how to play from behind. The big thing with this deck is you can take advantage of Counter Catcher. You can sit on TM Evo, start evolving your middle evolutions in play, and then eventually when your opponent's going to try and play the game, take a knockout, you can evolve up into Grimmsnarl, get Counter Catcher down, start swinging, taking out all their good Pokemon. Start prize racing them out of the game and controlling the board state with Counter Catcher. The key cards of the deck are these 3 guys. Grimmsnarl EX, when it evolves, it has the Punk Up ability, attach 5 basic Dark from the deck to your Marnie's Pokemon. The usual split is if you have a Morgrim or an Impidimp and you're going into Grimmsnarl, put 2 on the Grimmsnarl to activate its, you can energize its attack for the 2 darkness, and then put 1 on the benched guy, or wherever they are, the other Marnie's Pokemon, because you want to have thinned out the most cards while also leaving Dark in your deck for the guy all the way on the right. And then for the Shadow Bullet attack for 2 darkness, which just evolving gives you the energy requirement, so no need to worry about attaching during your turns. The main attaching you want to be doing is to your Monkey Dory. Do 180 to the active and 30 damage to 1 bench. And the reason that is so strong is because of the guy in the middle here, Frostlass. Frostlass during Pokemon checkup, which means when you pass your turn in between turns, the status of Pokemon is checked upon. It puts 1 damage counter, which is equal to 10 damage on everything that has an ability except for itself, or any Frostlass. So that can help you manipulate the game state incredibly. It will put damage on itself, it'll put damage on Monkey Dory, and it'll put damage on anything you can think of that has an ability. And that is what Monkey Dory is good for, because he can move 3 damage counters from himself to the other side to an opponent's Pokemon with a darkness attached to him, which means if you manipulate the damage in between a turn, you can do 30 damage to a bench Pokemon with Marnie's Grimmsnarl, 30 to it, or 3 damage counters to it from a Monkey Dory, and then 10 damage from a Frostlass. You can deal 70 damage to something with an ability in between a turn, which is incredibly strong for and attacking the active for 180. That is the biggest thing to remember in Pokemon Checkup is when the damage is placed. You want to make sure your Pokemon get it with abilities, so you're not screwing your opponent out of any damage that may help their game state, because we're all about fairness. And then you want to make sure your opponent is taking it. You want to make sure your opponent is placing damage counters because you want to have the most damage available to set up your multi-prize turns. Pheasantipity is the big card, the very, very big card that you can take advantage of this with, because he allows for the opponent to draw 3 cards if their Pokemon was knocked out during their opponent's last turn. But when the turn is passed and Pokemon Checkup takes place, your turn has ended. So if I were to deal 60 damage to a Pokemon with an ability that has 70 HP, Frostlass places 1 damage counter on it, and it is to be knocked out in between turns. I will still draw a prize card, but my opponent cannot use the Flip the Script ability. So knowing when to take knockouts, when to leave damage just shy of taking a knockout to allow Frostlass to do that can help you advance your board state while also robbing your opponent of any additional cards that can help them fight back against you. And the biggest, most difficult guy, the mathematician himself, Monkey Dory, because all sorts of decks are going to be bouncing damage off of you and off of each other using Monkey Dory, because that is the best card they've almost ever printed. Pokemon had no idea what they were doing when they gave us Monkey Dory. It has created some of the most complicated win cons possible. Just knowing how much Monkey Dory damage to place, not being over greedy, placing all 30, knowing where to heal it from to help your math. So, say your Grimmsnarl's got 100 damage on it, and your opponent can knock it out next turn, but if you heal the 30 off of it, it can't. So knowing how much to heal, knowing where to put it, Monkey Dory is the guy when it comes to that. So the big thing you need to remember going in your turns is my Monkey Dories, where should their damage go, how much damage can my opponent output, and then what that looks like in between the turns when the Frostlass damage is placed. And then when to take the knockouts. You can spend a lot of time in this deck not taking a full knockout, but doing tons of damage to something, and then setting up a single turn where you'll take multiple prizes, and then usually your opponent is taking knockouts, so you can use Iono, and then take knockouts, and then rob them of Pheasantipity draw, and give them no cards, and then take out their threats. That is the main thing about this deck, is being able. It is a very, very heavy on control, and placing damage in a way that lets you control the board state. And here is my list, the list I played to my most recent locals. It is by no means perfect. I think any deck list should not be looked at as the deck list to run. I think if you're running a deck list, you should put cards in it or change cards for yourself. Any person should do that. There's things about my own deck list I would change after playing it for 3 rounds and going 3-0 at a locals. I would change things about it, but the main core is always going to be there. The 4 Lilies, 4 Arven, 4 Iono, just having a ton of supporters. You're digging through your deck a lot because there's a lot of greedy cards in this deck. You see there's a lot of 2s and 1s on your screen, because this deck is relatively greedy, and if you got to dig for your pieces. But that's the thing that makes it strong, is because it has a ton of options. And then when you do get to those lower deck sizes and you have thinned a bunch of cards out, you're going to have a good chance to win the game. A big card we have not talked about yet in the top right here is Pikarunt EX. This card is incredibly strong in combination with Yveltal because it allows Yveltal to do two things that most decks don't have access to. Yveltal is a free retreat Pokemon and is a darkness Pokemon, and the Pikarunt ability, Subjugating Chains, allows it to push a darkness to the active spot and poison it, which means that if you're using Yveltal to stall out the game and use Clutch, then your opponent cannot not play the game because you have infinite damage with Monkey Dories. you can use Monkey Dory and Yveltal with Clutch Poison. The Yveltal will take damage from poison. You'll use Yveltal's attack to retreat lock, and then you'll be able to use Monkey Dory's damage to push to the other side. So you can essentially generate infinite damage, and if your opponent decides not to play the game, you will eventually win. You can advance the board state by doing nothing, essentially, which is incredibly strong. You don't have to play the game, and you advance the board state every turn. And then it also allows you to be an unstallable deck. If you have Pikarunt and Yveltal on your bench, there's no option for them to retreat lock you, or unless they're retreat locking the Yveltal, and in that case you're just doing it back. Or there's no chance for them to try and attempt to stall out a Frostlass, maybe. You know, push up a Frostlass, hope you don't have a way to retreat it, but you got Yveltal, Pekarunt pushes Yveltal, Yveltal has free retreat, you go into your Grimmsnarl, you win the game. Incredibly strong, good combo. Just being able to push anything to the active. I mean, even Marnie's Grimmsnarl, just push it to the active, start building damage. You know, maybe you missed your Frostlasses this game, or something like that. I definitely, an include for me, this is the exact list. I didn't want to modify it for the video. This is the exact list I played. Definitely an inclusion for me would be Energy Switch. That card's very strong in this deck because being able to go with 1 Darkness and use Monkey 2 times in the same turn is very strong, and it's not that hard to get out as a combo because of how many supporters you are playing. Because you're playing, you know, 4 Arvins and then 4 Lilies, 4 Ionas. You're gonna have pretty much your whole deck at your disposal if you draw mediocre in the game, which is strong. This is a very skill-heavy deck and a very pilot-heavy deck. If you know how to pilot the deck, more often than not, you're gonna have a solid game with a solid game plan behind you. And then another big card is Air Balloon, because that lets our Frostlasses be mobile if we don't have Yveltal Pekarunt, or at least in the early game. Because being able to go like Monkey Door in the active, turn 1, TM Evo, attach Dark, and then being able to save the darkness on it by attaching Air Balloon next turn and retreating is very good. We want to just have as many Darks on our Monkeys as possible. And the big card that I think is the most important card that makes the deck work, Spike Myth Gym, lets you search your deck for any Marnie's Pokemon once per turn. It's insane. It's insanely strong. There's nothing that strong with that type of an effect in the game right now. So being able to take advantage of that just for your own self, like your opponent, if they're not playing Marnie's Grimmsnarl, yeah, they can use it, but they can't get any value. You're putting this in play, you're bumping, you know, their Area Zero or any stadium they have that's important, and you just have Spike Myth Gym that gets you cards. It nets you cards, and your opponent doesn't net anything off of it. Especially if you go turn 1 Team Evo, you know, and then turn 2 have Spike Myth Gym straight into Grimmsnarl. It essentially just gives you Grimmsnarl a lot of the time, and if you're not searching Grimmsnarl off of it, you're usually searching more Grimm and you're playing a slow game plan waiting for them to take a knockout. So you're usually, if you get Spike Myth down and you're trying not to desperately find Impidimps, you're probably having a great game. So I think Spike Myth is the #1 card that is important. I know some people have run Artisan in the past. I am a Spike Myth at 3 believer. Next, we're going to talk about the matchups I had played at locals, how they went, and what to look for in certain matchups. We'll go to that next. Alright, so the 3 matchups that I ran into this week at my locals, I believe it was 9 players, but we did not reach the cap, which is 9 for 4 rounds, because there was some problems with someone showing up late and still getting inputted into the tournament. So we only ended up playing 3 rounds. It was only, you know, it was a smaller locals, but, you know, some of the mainstay locals that I see were there, so, you know, I knew, you know, had a good time, as you do at locals. It was fun. But I ended up playing Grimmsnarl. Actually, before the tournament, I had played like 8 or 9 matches in a row against my friend who was playing Terrabox, and actually played Terrabox to the tournament. Luckily, I did not play against him. That was not a great matchup. For me, at least, I lost all 9 in a row on like turn 2, and it's because I don't play Shaman, and they have obviously access to Wellspring Mask Ogerpon and Teal Mask Ogerpon will weak to that grass type, which is a big thing when talking about matchups, is knowing your weaknesses, and Grimmsnarl being weak to grass. Anything that runs Teal Mask Ogerpon is going to be a rough time for us because it gets that energy in play for free and it can do its attack pretty quickly. So lost 9 games in a row. I was pretty much certain that I was going to switch decks, but I ended up just going with it, you know, for fun. It's a smaller locals. I ended up doing well. Round 1 paired into Dragapult EX, and the thing with Dragapult EX is a lot of versions of Dragapult can beat Grimmsnarl, a lot of versions don't beat Grimmsnarl. It really depends on the build. My opponent didn't play down any Monkey Dories. I got to really see the power of the deck in this game because I won the game in 2 attacks. My opponent started out with Latios EX, which is weak to darkness, and I was able to get my turn 2 Team Evo play off, and then I was able to start swinging out, building up damage on the board, and then I knocked out Latios and knocked out a benched Pokemon, and then I was able to they had recovered Latios using Night Stretcher, and they set a turn setting up, and then the next following turn I was able to get Boss's Orders, and then take another 3 prize turn, so I was able to win that game incredibly fast because of being able to get set up really quickly. I went second, got my Team Evo play off, got my Grimmsnarl up there, and then I was able to take advantage of weakness that I knew I had, the advantage of being able to do the 360 to the Latios, and then also the Jercloaks having the ability allowed me to do extra damage with my Frostlasses and my Monkey Dories, and then take smaller prize knockouts. So I was able to win that game. It was a little less interesting of a game, but that one, some lists do play Monkey Dory, and there's a lot of lists at my locals playing to beat Grimmsnarl because it wasn't a great matchup for Dragapult when Grimmsnarl had first burst onto the scene. They're more so less not taking for that anymore. And they're, playing things like Dust Noir and stuff, which can beat you if you are not careful, because they can manipulate the damage on the board too pretty fast if you are not careful. And I don't have Psyduck. I don't even have a copy. I don't own a copy, but I don't know if I would even play it. If I did, it would be a consideration. But round 2 I thought was going to be a very quick loss, but I ended up getting incredibly lucky. I paired into Raging Bolt EX, and I had seen the previous round that he actually played Iron Leaves EX, which, if you don't know what that does, when it is played onto the bench, it can move to the active spot and attach 3 energies to it, and it does 180, I believe. So it would take the knockout on our Grimmsnarl, and then we would die. We would be knocked out immediately, just for him putting it down on the bench. But luckily, our opponent started very slow. They chose first because they were playing the Noctowl engine. He started with 1 Mew EX in the active, which is weak to darkness, and a Hoothoot on the bench, and he passed. So luckily, we did not see the Fan Rotom play out of him to get his Noctowl engine set up and retreat into Ditto. And then I went turn 2. I was able to get TM Evo off of. I had Team Evo in my starting hand, attached it to my active, and then I was able to use Lilies, which was able to get me a Darkness Energy, and I was able to get TM Evo off. And then what he ended up doing was attaching turn going first to his Mew, and then on his second turn he used Crispin because I had a what's it called in the active? I had a Monkey Door in the active, and I had able to get. I put 2 Frostlasses in play, I think. So he was able to copy Mind Bend, and in between the turn I was knocked out, which was very funny. And honestly, that's something I was not ready for at all. And then I was able to respond with my Grimmsnarl and start setting up on his bench. And he started making a comeback a little bit because of his ability to take advantage of the weakness. But I was able to set up one big turn where I could take a Hoothoot out and take out a Teal Mask Ogerpon. And I was able to take my final 3 prize cards. That one was also a pretty slow game because my opponent did brick. The first game I won because my deck was a bad matchup for my opponent. The second one, I was in a bad matchup, but sometimes your opponent does not draw well. But he did start making a very close comeback. It ended up being, I think, 2 prizes to when he had 2 prizes left when I had taken my final one. Because their deck is just so strong against yours when you're playing into Raging Bolt. And then the final round, I played into what I assume is either a neutral to bad matchup. I played this into Ceruledge EX, which is an interesting deck because they just turbo out and they can one-hit you. It just depends on how well they draw and how many energies they can get in their discard pile. My opponent never got to enough energies to ever take a full one-hit knockout, which is a very strong thing to do against Grimmsnarl. If you can't take one-hit knockouts against Grimmsnarl, you very often lose. But he, took advantage in the very early game. I had prized my secret box, the Ace Spec. The situation I was talking about earlier, I went turn 1 Arven with no supporter in hand going second. I got TM Evo, and I had to grab Buddy Poffin when I actually was going to try and do the thing I was talking about earlier to make secret box in my hand. I was going to have to get rid of some good resources, but I was going to be able to get lilies and then play the game. But I ended up not playing the game for about 2 to 3 turns. He just went knockout, Impidimp. I sent up Yveltal at some point and stalled out Lunatone, and he was able to get Jet Energy and knock me out. And then he took 3 single prize knockouts before I ever attacked, but I was able to find Lily's Determination, get a Grimmsnarl set up, and then I started punching into things, and I was taking knockouts on his Lunatone and Charcadets, because the Lunatone has an ability to pitch a Fighting Energy and draw 3 cards, which was a very strong engine. But it ended up coming down to is the turn prior to me losing, because I had only a 1 Grimmsnarl in play and no Impidimps. I knew it was going to get knocked out on my following turn after I attacked and took a 2 prize knockout, and I needed to take 3 prizes to win. So I set up 30 damage on a Charcadet, and then, 60 damage on a Charcadet, sorry. I went Iono, and I attached a Darkness Energy to my Pikaron EX, which my opponent was not ready for, because when they took a knockout on my Grimmsnarl, I had Countercatcher in hand, they went down to 1 prize, I was at 3, I Countercatchered up a 2 prize Pokemon, I attached a second Dark to the Pikaron, and what Pikaron's attack does, it does 60 for every prize card your opponent has taken. So at that point, it was doing 300 damage, and then I was able to use Lucky Dory to finish off the Charcadet with 60 damage, take 1 prize card, and then knock it out for 300 damage, taking all 3. So that game, I had to play very much from behind, and I even had to resort to Pikaron EX's attack. But that is the power and strength of this deck, is that I was completely behind the whole game, but my ability to manipulate damage on my opponent's board and control that is the only reason that I could win. That is why Grimmsnarl is so strong. That's why I love it. I love decks like that, where they're super control-y. I play God of War EX a lot. It's similar to that. It's a lot of damage, math, a lot of moving stuff around. But that is the main thing about Grimmsnarl that is great, is that you can just play the game, whenever you want, I guess. You can spend 3 turns not doing anything, just getting knocked out for single prizers, and then you just create a big trade where you take, you swing the game 6 prizes in a row. It's incredibly strong like that. So if you know what you're doing, this is a great deck to take the locals. It's very fun, and there's just sort of an impending doom that if you do not come after Grimmsnarl, it will get you. And that's what Yveltal can do for you, and Frostlass. There's just an impending doom that you will lose the game. Well, that is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something by watching this. Some things we talked about, ways what to set up, what to look for, things to do when playing Grimmsnarl. If you have the deck, you have the cards. It's a fun deck. You should run it to local sometime. It's very enjoyable. And I highly recommend it. And like I said, if you learned anything, hope you take that in with the games, and I hope you win. Have a nice day.